Don's Wife, Chapter 4, Part 3. She threw herself on her mother, who had collapsed to the ground in a heap. The back of her head had hit the rim of a large flower pot, leaving a blood trail as it slid down. Minu grabbed her mother's head even before it touched the ground, and then she screamed again, and again, and again. Though tears flooded her eyes and blurred her vision as they locked into Kamini's eyes, she still noticed a brightness emerge in them along with the appearance of a faint smile on her lips. Then she felt the brightness receding slowly, the faint smile melting away, the clutch of Kamini's hand on her hand loosening. She clasped her mother's body in a tight embrace and then scream, 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 cry, 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 blood, 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 shouts, 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 people, 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 feet, 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 running feet, scrambling feet, shouts, screams, shouts, screams, chaos, crowd, disorder, order, confusion. After that, everything became a blur for her. A blur of screams, tears, blood, shouts, people, running feet, scrambling feet, crowds, disorder, confusion. The blur compounded with frenzy, maddening frenzy, panic, ambulances, stretchers, uniformed orderlies, people falling on people, people pushing into the ambulance, people being pushed out, traffic, sirens, tires, screeching, photographers, TV cameras, lights, intruding lights, thrusting of microphones, security men shouting, long corridors, large lifts, people hurriedly parting away, quizzical faces, ICU doors shutting, and then silence, deafening silence. She flitted in and out of dreams. Well, something like dreams. Maybe they were not dreams at all. Perhaps they were just shapes, shapeless shapes, incongruous shapes, languorous shapes fused into incoherent sounds, floating across or whirling through barrel-like corridors, leaving behind drone-like trails. Minu remained seated in the long corridor outside the ICU, wherein Kamini had been taken 4 hours earlier. A solitary figure on the bench, she sat stoically without shifting her place, or even going to the washroom, or eating or drinking anything, not even a drop of water, lest something happened, lest she lost something. She had declined to wash or alter anything in her state, her hair, her body, and her clothes, from what it was when she had held her mother. She wanted to retain every single drop of her mother's blood on her body and clothes, her sweat, her breath, her smell, everything. They were all alive for her. Through them, her mother was alive for her, on her, in her. But her tears had not stopped, now streaming forth and now drying up. Remorseful tears, soothing tears, betrayer tears, which said so much, reminded so much which remained unsaid, so much which was wantonly said. Her mother's trusted staff had taken control of everything, calmly, unobtrusively. Her own security, the hospital's security, attendants, friends, visitors, and sympathizers all had been told. They had kept discreet distance to let her be in her space, her private space, with her mother's feel embracing her, enwrapping her. After another 3 hours, when final word was given, and her mother's body was moved to the morgue for embalming, she still did not move. Then Jamna Tai, her own and her mother's personal attendant, was summoned, who tenderly motioned Meenu to move on and escorted her home. News had travelled like wildfire. There was a siege-like situation at the house, even more so than it was at the hospital. OB-vans, stringers, freelance photographers, TV crews, clandestine cameras perched on nearby trees, police vehicles, security men, guards, sniffer dogs, TV and radio reporters racing through running commentaries, scuffles, polite nudging, heated arguments, occasional silences, everything. There were crowds everywhere, outside in the lanes, in the compound, within the house. People were spilling over, relatives, friends, fellow workers. They had all come from near and afar. Meenu was brought home in a security ring and helped to sneak into her own house through the seldom used small back door by a posse of plain-clothed armed men. She was ushered into her mother's room, which had immediately become the prohibited area. Everybody was barred from venturing near it. Jamna Tai was proclaimed the sole licensee to enter Meenu's quarters and to entreat her for obligatory tasks, if any. For others, she had temporarily become incommunicado, near and dear ones included. But the ones who were truly the nearest to Meenu and the family had neither arrived, nor were they really in a position to arrive, for reasons which were completely beyond them. Most important of them all was her father, Harsh. He was a daddy she had hardly known. He had to flee the country when she had just arrived in this world. If it was almost impossible to track him for the 11 years that he traversed the world as a fugitive, it was even less possible to actually meet and spend time with him now when he was in the country. Since his incarceration in Yerwada jail, he was absolutely out of bounds, except for her solitary brief visit he had agreed to long time ago. For her, he was largely a name, a photograph, reportage in newspapers and the electronic media, and a benefactor who sent expensive gifts. The non-stop news coverage on channels which Harsh had tracked all afternoon had left him feeling extremely lonely and spent from within. He felt no retributive satisfaction on getting the news, and now when a deep urge was pushing him to be by the side of his daughter, to hold her and comfort her, his strange inadequacy was debilitating him from even facing her. Bhau had meekly offered to pull levers to get him the permission to visit home for the last rites of his wife, but he had declined the suggestion. There were too many wounds, too much of pain for remorse. He had dropped himself into his wheelchair and motioned it out to the secluded corner of the jail garden nearby, where he often withdrew to be in the impenetrable space which was all his and his alone. Of course, without any beckoning, Bhau had on his own sent emissaries to the house and had made impregnable though unobtrusive arrangements for Meenu's security and protection.